Hello and welcome to the My Hope Story podcast from Hope Community Church Ballanark. Stories of hope, all about Jesus.
Who are we, but sinners saved by grace?
Right, well, Stephen, how are you?
Doing the best. What about yourself?
Doing grand. So we are here, where's the camera I'm looking at? We are here on holiday this week down in Lockerbie, is that where we are?
Yep, close by.
And Stephen's one of my mates, and he is, well, when we met, you were a pastor from Glasgow in Ards.
That's correct.
And I was a pastor from Ards, but in Glasgow.
Absolute swap.
Which is amazing, isn't it? And I was half his size. No, so, yeah, we're going to hear a little bit about Stephen's story, but I thought I'd rope him into this as we're away on holiday together, which is great. What that does mean is I'm trying to do all the stuff that Reagan usually does and talk and look skinny, none of which is going to work. So don't worry about that. Stephen is also worried about a spot on his face, aren't you?
Have
you seen
massive.
the spot?
It's humongous. You'll not miss it. You'll not miss it.
Alright, so Stephen, the point of these things is we just try and just share the Called My Hope Story podcast.
Super.
And we just want to talk through how Jesus has broke into some people's lives and kind of turned them around and given them hope. I am trying to get the 20 schemes guys to pick these up, and they think they're far too long and boring. So if you can be not long and boring, then who knows, they might go more wide. Anyway, Stephen, we just want to start by where you grew up, your family, where did you were born, all that kind of stuff. So.
Yeah. So born in Rutherglen Maternity Hospital in the south side of Glasgow, and grew up in the south side. So from there, loved it. I am the son of a pastor. My dad pastored a church that was in the Delphi School in the Gorbals area of Glasgow.
Okay.
Moved to the Victoria Road of Glasgow.
Which, isn't that... Did Pete Bell go there back a long time ago? No, that's not the Vicky Hull.
No, it's different.
Okay.
No.
What was the church?
Scottish Reformed Church it was called.
Cool.
So yeah, so that was my church education. I grew up going to Sunday school there, going to church services, pastor's kid, front row, badly behaved, you get dragged out, that kind of thing. So all good.
And like, how did you find that? Like, was that something that you were enjoying? Like, did you kind of get involved all the Jesus stuff at that stage, or?
Yeah, I suppose as a kid, you go along because you go along. It's your life, isn't it? It's just what you do. So I guess I enjoyed it in the sense that it was a communal thing.
Yeah.
Those people went and you went as well. But I didn't really know anything else, so I just went.
And brothers, sisters?
Yeah, I'm the youngest. So I've got two big sisters and a big brother, Angela, Caroline, and David.
And what's the age gap there? 2
years roughly between each of us. So I'm 39, and you can work your way up from that. Yeah, I know. I know I look older, but
Yeah. Can we zoom in your face here? Look at this
please
tail,
don't,
like,
please don't. Brutal.
Oh wait, I was too far right.
No, yeah.
But yeah, so growing up in Glasgow, then
Yeah.
you lived south side, like pastor in Victoria. So where did you live? Was that nearby? the church?
No. So it was about 4 miles away. So a nice wee bit. Place called Netherley. It's kind of between Muirend and Netherley.
Yeah.
It's kind of red sandstone house attached. Nice wee neighbourhood. Space out the back to go and run in some trees and plenty of kerbs at the front to play kerby. So.
And that came with the church, though, right?
Yeah.
So you were saying the other day even that, like, you kind of wouldn't have been able to live there if it wasn't the manse.
No. I mean, it was because it was the manse that we lived there. Absolutely. So it was a nice area.
Cool.
Yeah.
And then school. So what school did you go to?
Netherley Primary, on to William Wood High School. So yeah. No, again, leafy suburbs, good wee spot. And how
did you get on at primary school?
Dead on. Yeah. I did well. Did you have
to bribe them for that? Or?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, probably. Sweet talk them or something. But yeah, no, it went well. Primary school was a decent experience. No qualms about it. Yeah, it was. I had good pals. We played football an awful lot. That was kind of the central focus. That and pretending to play for the football team that we adored, and that was it.
What team was that?
Well, there only really is one team in Scotland.
Motherwell, is that what you're saying?
Definitely not Motherwell, no. 55 times the Kings of Scotland.
A lot of your life scenes revolve around this team, is that right?
I do still have a season ticket, that's correct, yes.
We'll get on to that, I'm sure.
Okay.
So that was primary school, then William Wood, because that was where Pete Bell went to school as well.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, totally, yeah.
But you must have been like 20 years ahead of him, I guess.
At least, yeah. I didn't know him, he didn't know me, so yeah, we were... I don't even know if we were at school at the same time.
And so as you went into your teens, kind of secondary school and that, would you say you were Christian? Like, would you, obviously you were taught a lot by your family? Like, was that something that was yours at that stage, or?
Yeah, so that's kind of a complicated thing, as it often is, I think, with people who come from Christian backgrounds, but that doesn't excuse, you know, the way my life went around that time. But I reckon about the age of 7, I came to a real consciousness of sin. You know, you've got Bible teaching at home, you're going to Sunday school, you understand creation, salvation, you know, hell. All of those things are pretty much, you know, well tuned in. And I remember at the age of 7 realising I was a sinner, realising that I deserved God's punishment and that the consequences of that would lead me to hell. Now, folks hear that and they think, a 7-year-old, wise up, you know, that's pure indoctrination, you're mad. But I remember wee things like, we had a Safeways near the house, and I remember my brother...
Safeways, that is showing your age as well.
Oh, it probably is.
Is that about Morrison's now?
I think it is, actually.
I remember Safeway.
Yeah, you know, it was definitely a Safeway when I was younger, but my brother sent me up to get a wee packet of chewing gum when my mum was doing the shopping, but, you know, he didn't send me up with any money. And so being a wee kid, I had to get it, stick it in the pocket, get it home, and it was a double sin because we weren't allowed to have chewing gum. My mum hated the stuff. And so I remember lying underneath the bed, the two of us chewing this stuff. And it was wee things like that's one example, but I knew I was a sinner. I knew that the things that were sinful in my life deserved God's punishment. That had been taught to me, but I really realised that, and I remember asking God to save me. I remember, this is stereotypical, you know, kneeling by my bed with my mother asking for salvation. And I remember even over the years between then, what's 7-year-old, that's probably, you know, P3 or something, P4.
That's Josh, yeah, maybe P4.
So, you know, maybe for 3 years at least, reading my Bible, praying without needing my parents to be there beside me. And I was brought up in the King James Version, so reading, you know, quite an old translation. Now, I didn't systematically.
Did you just hear that?
No.
Somewhere Chris Kerr is celebrating right now that you said you're reading the King James Version going up.
Yeah.
I can hear that from, you're 100 miles away from Chris, I can hear it. Anyway, sorry, keep going.
Oh dear. There's an angel celebrating somewhere, I'm sure. But no, I read the King James Version, and specifically Psalms. Like, I didn't go through Genesis to Revelation. I read short Psalms. I was a kid. I picked out the short ones and I read them, and near enough memorised them just from reading them over and over. And yeah, that was it. You know, that was kind of my personal walk outside of, you know, what I was being taught and other things. But yeah, high school was coming. I remember my brother saying to me as high school approached, he says, Stephen, he says, wee secret for you. You need to keep a wee secret. You promise? I've learned not to make promises until I hear what the thing is. But I says and he says, I smoke. I said, yeah. It's a bombshell. I know it sounds silly just now, but you know, as a kid, that was like, what?
How many years older is David?
Well, I say 2. You know, the way the birthdays fall, 2, nearly 3. But so he was a few years above me at school as well. But I was like, that's mental. So that was one wee thing that was going on in the back of my head. You know, accepting, oh, what's high school going to be like? You know, I'm going to see stuff like that. But I also remember something really strange. You know, some people might be like, wow, that's amazing, let's zoom in on that, and other people might be like, that's weird, go away from this. But I'll tell you anyway. I remember being in this room, top floor, 3rd floor of this big house, and having a dream one time like there was something evil in the room. And whether it was a double dream or whether it was whatever, I don't know, but I remember it seemed like I woke up and it still felt like there was the presence of something evil in the room. And whatever strange logic of a little kid, I remember thinking, if I don't pursue God, I don't need to worry about that. Right. And so there's these things kind of all seeming to go on at once in my head. You know, maybe softening, accepting, you know, things that maybe I wouldn't have accepted, but also kind of almost a fear of following God because I felt like there was almost consequences. So there's a spiritual battle going on there, I think. And long story short, I stopped reading my Bible. My prayer life just started to wane away. And by the time I got to high school, I was just trying to be one of the lads, you know, whenever folks were going to go and try their first wee smoke, first year, you know, that. And whenever folks fairly soon after that were maybe getting their first wee drink, you know, I joined them as well. A wee girl ran into that same Safeways for us, and I managed to get a hold of a bottle or something. So
when you were that age?
Oh, when I was probably the summer between 1st and 2nd year at the latest.
So you've always looked old and ugly. Is that
that's why, yeah, hard paper round and yeah.
And
so,
like, did your mum and dad know that? Obviously,
no
they're
idea.
pastors.
Oh, it would have broke their hearts at that stage. I mean, it would absolutely broke their hearts. But you know, me and my brother were a wee bit rebellious, and at that point, coy enough to keep it from them.
So at home, everything seemed fine. You were still
Oh.
able to talk the talk. And
Especially with me, my brother I think was a wee bit more like honest about it. I was a wee bit more sleek about it, and you know I was living a double life, you know, going to church on a Sunday with my wee shirt and tie on and acting all good, but at the same time, you know, my language had just dropped into bad language, and I was up to wee bits and pieces as well, you know, so yeah.
so that was through secondary school, kind of early on. Like, at what point did you like did it become clear? Do you think that things here aren't the way they used to be, or that you weren't really walking with the Lord?
Well, secondary school just continued. I suppose in a wee way, things improved a little bit. You know, as secondary school went through kind of second to maybe third or fourth year, because I got into the cross-country running and athletics. So while I was still up to a wee bit of rubbish, you know, I think, you know, I stopped doing some of the things as much. As a kid, you're only mucking about with it anyway, aren't you? So, but as soon as a footballing injury put out the cross-country career, and moving house, things really started to kind of drift away. So what happened was we lived there, but we ended up moving to Fenwick in East Ayrshire.
Right.
So my parents found a house where my granny could move into a wee granny flat on the side. I must have been about third year or fourth year, probably about fourth year. And I was adamant I was still going to school in Glasgow. I was still going to keep my pals in Glasgow. So
How long was that? Was it a bus or wherever you got?
a bus, yeah, no. So I had to walk about half a mile. I had to cross the 77, yeah, every morning to get to a bus. Then a bus about 20-25 minutes down the road, and then I had to walk from there to get to school. But I was determined I was wanting to do that, and so I stuck with that. But what came with that was I was in the BB, so Friday nights went to BB, and a number of my pals' parents had said, you know, you could stay at our house whenever you come down, and so that opened up the doors, didn't it? So,
And so at that stage, like, did you know in your head that you weren't following Jesus? Like, did you still kind of believe it, or where were you kind of at personally with all that
I
stuff?
never stopped believing it. Never, ever, ever stopped believing it. If people, we'll maybe get into later on, or maybe not, but as I got older and started to really live a life, a sinful life, you know, with no church influence or anything at all, I would have argued with people, blind drunk, you know, full of whatever, telling them that, you know, they shouldn't say that there's no such thing as God, and arguing for the creation account and stuff. So, I mean, it was mad, but I never stopped believing it.
Cool. So how did life transition to that point then? So that was kind of towards the end of school, you're moving.
Yeah, so got my results for my standard grades. Weren't great, you know, I was predicted good grades, didn't get them because I never studied and was more interested mucking about. It was the same with hires. I did a few hires, you know, they were a bomb scare. And after that, I was meant to go on and do a sixth year. But when they came in, it was like, you know, why even bother? And so I remember actually saying to my parents at that point, you know, I'm not going to go back to high school. I'm not going to go back to this. I'm just going to go and get a job. And they didn't argue. And I was like, oh, wow, power. Happy days. Actually, I will do that then. And so I went and got a job. From that, I ended up getting another job.
What were you working at?
So the first place I worked was in a wee brewer's fair. I worked just as a waiter and in the kitchen. I moved into the kitchen. But I got an apprenticeship, so I took on an apprenticeship as an apprentice mechanic.
Oh, really?
Yeah, no, I did a year.
So you should have continued that, then our friendship could have been, you know, more beneficial.
Could have saved myself a fortune as well, but it didn't happen. What happened was, around that time, I started to get paid. I was 17, I was getting paid next to nothing. But I was living for the weekend, out Friday night, out Saturday night, and I was doing this job. It was shift work, so it was 4 days on, 4 days off, 12-hour shifts in the garage, believe it or not. And that means that you do quite a lot of weekends, which is a nightmare when you were living for the weekend.
And were you living at home at this point?
Living at home most of the time, staying at my pals an awful lot, but yeah, living at home, that was my address, you know, and stuff. But it was around that time, 17, that my mates started to go into Glasgow, go to dancing and stuff, and then they would have started getting involved in, you know, a wee bit more in alcohol, and I just went into a wee scene, first night in Bonkers, bouncing. I know, and that became the place that we went. But I went dead into that scene, so just the dance scene and all that went with it, and really quickly kind of got so into it that I was into it more than my pals were, and I latched on to another group of friends, or they invited me into their group. and they weren't from the area I was from. They were from a mixture of areas, quite a lot of schemes around Glasgow, and we started going about, and then the weekends really started to become like something that they really just latched onto each other. Very quickly I quit that job as an apprentice mechanic because I was far more interested in living for the weekend. And so it would have been, Friday, build up to go out for Friday night, which involved quite a lot, and then going out on Friday night, and then you would have sustained yourself through the night, and you'd have gone to a wee party somewhere afterwards, just in a flat somewhere in Glasgow, and then you'd have gone through the night to the next morning. If you went to somebody's house and tried to get a kip, it was hard, but you might have got some sleep, and then when you woke up you were just straight in through for Saturday night, and it was the same right through to Sunday. But that went on, and I mean, there was months where I was just all the time, just
What age
back
were
to
you at
back.
this point?
Probably 18, 19, 17, 18, so probably 18, 19.
And clearly no church connection?
No church connection at all, and it just spiralled at that point. I mean, I fell out with my parents at home. I was, badly behaved at home and deserved to be told to leave the house. And I dropped contact with my parent for a while then, and I just lived around, different places. I wouldn't have said I was homeless, but because I always, put my head down in a house. Well, almost always. Anytime we didn't, it was just a few of us mucking about, sleeping on a golf course one night or something. But we, I stayed in Govan in a pal's bird's house for a wee while. He stayed there. I stayed in the sofa, and moved around from pal's house to sleeping in their garage or something sometimes, in all honesty. But it was just all for the weekend.
And did you enjoy life at that point? Was this were you loving the buzz? Was it something that you were this is what I want to do? Or
I thought so. I really thought I was a king, because I was running about with a bunch of boys that, I thought were something. And I mean, they were sound as, they were good guys, they were really good to me. But, they were living this kind of crazy life. Most of them not working, most of them making, money, in other ways. And I thought it was cool, I don't know, I was just blinded by, thinking it was really, really cool. I guess I probably thought that you could have made a film about us because we were so brilliant and tragic, but, I really did think it was dead cool. But didn't realise it was, terrible.
I would think there was was your conscience playing up at that point? Was there, I know you're kind of say you think you were saved, so was the Spirit convicting you of that, or were you just damping that all down?
This is an interesting part. So I mean, somebody listening to this will probably have their own judgment on whether I was saved or not. God kept on just dropping wee things in. So maybe something would happen. You know what it's like when you're running about with a bunch of boys and you're going out at the weekends. Stuff happens, and I remember, maybe one night stuff kicked off, and the folks who it all kicked off with knew me. And so even though I'd not been involved, I was actually the one trying to split it all up. But it was we want to get a hold of him. And I remember thinking, I'm getting it here. In fact, I heard through a number of different sources I was the one that was going to get in it. And it was oh no. I remember being at the bus stop. By this time, or during this wee spell I was going back home, I remember sitting at a bus stop somewhere with my ranger scarf up over my nose and a hat down over my eyes like a ninja. And I was
you probably looked like a lot of people in the west of Scotland at that point.
Well, probably so, but I was sitting at the bus stop just like that, so that if anybody drove past I wouldn't be seen. And so there was this fear in my heart. And what's mad is at this point, so see these psalms that I used to read, like Psalm 70, make haste to help me, O God, make haste to deliver me, for enemies are risen up against me, and all these things are I'm praying them, I verbatim. I was totally remembering these things that had been in my childhood. And things worked out. But unfortunately, just the way that things were with me, I still had the weekend as my priority. God was not my God. The weekend was my God, I think, at that point. It was a false God. And I was living for some satisfaction, which, by the way, never matched the early satisfactions, the early highs. I was always chasing after something.
You always need more.
Yeah, no, totally. And so it was just a cycle of that. Those types of things kept on happening.
So what was it like, we been zoom out? So we are focusing on the West of Scotland 20 schemes for the next number of years, and I've spoken to a few different guys that have kind of grown up in Glasgow and the West, and obviously Glasgow had a bit of a notorious reputation back in the day, like even when you were like kicking about, like with knife crime, like kind of gang violence, a lot of that stuff. Was that something that you would have kind of drawn into? Like, did you see some of that firsthand, or what was that?
So I mean, the nightclubs were bouncing with that kind of stuff. I mean, there was always people getting glassed and stabbed and stuff. Afterwards, there was always a Barney, folks outside that club I mentioned before. Would have always met other people afterwards, and there was knives getting, passed from one person to another, and so there was an awful lot of knife crime. I remember some of the boys that would have come up who I knew, but didn't run about with, but I knew them and they knew me. They were just always running about the town, just gang fights and up to all that kind of stuff. But I mean, I don't want to paint myself wrong by saying this, but I always would have thought I was the kind of peacemaker, nice guy in a fun crowd. But I was a sinner and living a sinful life. So
it's funny because I can imagine you like Josh earlier on when we were leaving the restaurant and said, "Stephen's really nice, isn't he? He like compliments everybody you see." And I'm like, "He's really just bamming folk up, Josh." But like, I can imagine you like that as well, even in the midst of all that. Like, you must have been the kind of connecting guy that was like trying to like.
That is it. I mean, I've always seen myself like that, just trying to get people together. But it's horrible when it works the other way, isn't it? And people end up fighting with each other.
So how long did that kind of lifestyle go on for? Like, did it spiral more after that, or?
So I mean, as I say, it went through different highs and lows. After a while, probably when I was about 20-ish. So this has been going on for 3 or 4 years, let's say. In a serious kind of sense, and I ended up trying to relink with my old pals. I needed some sort of peace, normality, and so I was trying to get away from the kind of mentalness of it all, and I ended up running about with some of my old pals, and just things kept on happening, so it was just like it lacked peace. Life at that point lacked peace, but I remembered the peace of Jesus, and I remembered even places that I'd been growing up. So my parents would have gone to a holiday Bible conference some years down in England, and so I remembered just how safe it felt. And so I said to them that year, I says, "Can I come along?" And I went, and it was like a solace. It was just so peaceful. And I remember at that time really just feeling under conviction and even praying just that God would start working in my life. And I remember I had cigarettes, I got rid of them. I didn't decide at this point I was going to try and smoke the last ones and then get rid of them afterwards. It was like, they're gone. I'm going to stop it. I'm turning over a new leaf, and I really had prayed that God would work in my life. So I don't know what you would call that because of what I'm about to tell you, because I got home determined that this was something new.
And your mum and dad must have been hopeful at that point as well, because they must have seen your life kind of spiral and must have done them no end of harm.
I mean, they must have worn out the carpet with their knees. Totally. This.
You said your brother was kind of involved in that.
He didn't even come to God until later. So they were tormented. But I got home from that really thinking something's at work here. I remember getting home and the phone ringing. Yeah, and it's my best pal. So the phone gets passed to me, back in those walkabout phones in the house, like early mobiles. And I went through to my dad's study, clear as day. I remember I was chatting to him for honestly 20 minutes, and that would have been seen as wrong. Two guys talking for 20 minutes, that's all about. It was normally 2 minutes, what you doing, meet you there, blah blah blah. But we talked about loads of stuff, and I'd said, listen, I'm not going to be doing this anymore, I'm not going to be doing that anymore, I'm not going to be doing this. Things that really I did need to, stop doing. It wasn't just some legalistic, changing of the guard. And he's like, all right, cool. What are we going to do? And so he was on board. And I was like, I don't know, like go camping or something. I don't know, up the West Island way. And he's like, yeah, fine. That was mental, because he was totally on board. This is a guy I'd been like best pals with, grown up, and obviously hadn't spent as much time during the mad years, but still kept contact with. And then reconnected, and you know, all he wanted was just to, you know, stay together as pals and do stuff. But I went off that phone and I thought, I didn't say anything about Jesus. I didn't say that God's worked in my life, and I thought I need to, you know, get that right, because if there's something going on here, I need to tell people about it. And so I went to work on the Monday, right, which was a harder environment, really, when you think about it. And I says to them, I'm a Christian now. And they were like, what? You know, I'm a Christian, and what does that mean? Is it, you know, well, I've asked Jesus to forgive me for my sins, and I want to, you know, walk with him, so I'm not going to do this and that. And so straight after work, they're like, you know, come on, we'll do this, come on, we'll do that. Stuff that isn't necessarily wrong, but I wanted to draw a line, and I was like, no, I'm not doing it. And, funny, the Tuesday when I got home, went to bed. My dad shut the door. He said, Stephen, I've got something I need to tell you. I said, what is it? He says, your pal John's been in a car crash. He's dead.
Was that your best mate?
Best mate, yeah.
The one you were on the phone to?
The one I was on the phone to, and I never got a chance to say anything to him. So that, by the way, is one of the, you know, things in my heart that makes me always want to tell people about Jesus, because, well, we've got to trust in the sovereignty of God, but that's not an excuse either, isn't it? Not so. Yeah, that was heavy. And after that, this is where I said it kind of goes a bit pear-shaped again, because, you know, met the mates after, went down, a few of the closest ones got together, and nah, I'm not going to this and that. And then as the day went on, I was razzled. And it was just the start of another wee spell of just, you know, not living as a Christian at all. Which again ended up in a horrible scenario where bad stuff happened. And, you know, it was like, what is going on in my life? Every time I try and live against God, you know, he comes with his rod. Doesn't the Bible say he uses his rod sparingly? But it was like he used it for discipline. And I ended up getting back in line. I say God came, you know, brought me back kicking and screaming. You know, it wasn't a kind of lovely little Disney romance story where I just, you know, was wooed straight there. It was, I do believe something happened as a kid, and God gave me enough length to go for a distance, and then he brought me back kicking and screaming. And I remember one morning waking up, not remembering anything that happened, retracing steps, and it was like more and more over a day as the time went on, as I found out everything that happened. And it was just a point of like, I need to stop doing this. And, you know, the peace of God, the love of the Lord Jesus, the forgiveness, you know, the cost of the cross, all of these things all coming around versus my life of absolute rebellion. And it was an absolute, I give in. I'm stopping it. I'm stopping living for myself. It's empty, it's hollow. It always leads to nowhere. And I need Jesus. And it was around that time actually that I moved over to Northern Ireland, where I knew some folks who were Christians. I thought I need a clean break, you know, a bit of good company around me to try and help me get on the straight and narrow, and that's what happened.
What's that poem, The Hound of Heaven? You ever heard that?
I've heard of it. I don't know if I could...
Yeah, I can't remember. It's just the whole idea of like God, like we think that we are like, you know, running away, rebelling and no hope, and yet God is just running and pulling us back, like that kind of hound of heaven. He's like
that's my experience. I mean, that totally is. It's all been of God just coming for me, and yeah, glory to him.
So you got to Northern Ireland, which is weird because probably what year was that?
2004.
Okay, so I moved over to Scotland a wee bit by then.
Yeah.
So how did that come about? Because your dad's from Northern Ireland,
well,
right?
that links it in. So I would have gone over to Northern Ireland in the summer, sometimes more for, you know, the summer activities.
What do you mean by that, Stephen?
Northern
Couple
Ireland.
of flutes and things, right?
Well, it shares the same colour scheme as France, but it has a bit of a different celebration than Bastille Day. Day before it.
Remember Chris is also getting excited by that, actually. Yeah, I can hear everything.
Oh dear. So I was into all that, just, you know, with the Rangers connections and stuff, and I loved all the bands and the flags and all that kind of stuff. I know I was into it, but I moved over there with Christian friends, and I got involved in a church, which is great. I ended up moving to the area that my grandparents came from. So yeah, the Donegal Road. Probably a better known location is Sandy Road, just a few hundred metres down the road, and lived there. It was brilliant, absolutely loved it. Went to a wee local church there, went along. After a wee while, you know, I got asked to give a testimony by a guy, and I told him my story, real raw. wee things like that would pop up from time to time, and then I get asked to become a Sunday school teacher.
And so, by this point, you were right back walking with the Lord again.
Like as in, totally, just as in, as much as I pursued the weekend and more, I wanted Jesus, and I wanted to live for Him, and I couldn't get enough of church-related events, the Bible, not so much at that point reading books about the Bible, but just Bible, Jesus, prayer life, And
was it the Free Peace Road at that point?
It was, yeah. So I lived in Donegal Avenue, and the Tyndale Free Presbyterian Church was on Donegal Avenue, just down at the wee bridge next to Windsor Park.
Yeah, I was going to say.
So I went there, and
why did you? I thought as a Rangers fan you should be, Linfield should be your team, but
no. Well, obviously, I like Linfield and I have a soft spot for them. But living in Newtownards now, my Northern Irish team is Newtownards. You want to support your local team, don't you?
So you lived down Donegal Avenue?
Yeah, Donegal Avenue, went to the wee church there, and then, this is mad, my grandparents taught Sunday school in Daddy Duff, Alderman Duff, or Councillor Duff's hall. He was in the Belfast City Council, but a Christian, in Sandy Row. That then became a Free Presbyterian church.
Okay.
Yeah, he gave the hall over to the big man with the promise that it would keep on being used as a gospel venue, a gospel location, a place where the Bible would keep on being taught, and so it became a Free P church. And I taught in the exact same location that my grandparents taught Sunday school. I taught Sunday school. Awesome. So it was really cool, like a few generations down, still teaching Jesus to boys and girls in that same location. And
did you still have family at that point nearby in Belfast? Or?
So my gran and grandpa still lived in Grey Abbey.
Okay.
Yeah, so just past Newtownards. So yeah, they were there. They loved it that we'd moved over there. And that I was doing this, teaching where they were. But Sunday school teaching led into like youth opportunities. Maybe taking a youth meeting, which is a bit more of a serious level, and even preaching. From time to time. This is a kind of 2-year-old Christian, if you want to call it that, or back to faith. Sermons that kind of had a bit of Matthew Henry and a tiny bit of Stephen, and then soon realised actually I need to write my own sermons here. It was an evolution, but I started to get involved in wee things like that. But I just wanted to be a good Christian. I wanted to, in the gym where I worked and in the places that I went to be able to communicate Jesus.
Well, that's like one of the things that it's just obvious when you meet you is that you're all in for whatever you're doing at any given time. So I can imagine that kind of switch all in for all this stuff at the weekend, but then when the Lord brings you back, you can see him today, all in for Jesus. Where were you working at that point? Did you get a job over here, just secular kind of stuff, or what?
Yeah. Remember I said about the cross country?
Yeah.
So I was always into the fitness side of things, so a job came up as a salesperson, and it was in a gym. So you're basically selling gym memberships, but I proved myself as a salesperson.
You must be the most salesy salesperson I've met, so that makes a lot of sense.
I had a natural wee bent towards sales, and with the fitness angle, it worked, really worked. I progressed through that, sales management, flitted around, ended up in general management, so I managed a health and fitness club. Which essentially was managing the sales department and all of the other stuff, but there was other people could do those bits of admin stuff, and meant I could focus the guys on sales, which led to becoming a regional sales trainer as well. And
you're pretty successful at that, weren't you?
We went really good, and the company were really good, which was an encouragement. If you want people to work well, encourage them or reward them, and they gave good prizes if you did well, so you kind of kept on at it, and get a good pat on the back whenever you did well.
And then, so what about marriage and stuff? How did that, so what age were you when you moved to Belfast?
Okay, so we'll step back again. So I was probably 21. So I'd known Lydia since I was a kid. That holiday Bible conference that we'd have gone to, we went from Glasgow. She came across from Northern Ireland. Okay. And so I got to know. Now she was a shy wee girl, right? So day one of 5 days at this conference, hi. That progressed maybe to hi and how are you by day 2, but by day 4 or 5,
you'd broken her down.
Yeah, absolutely. You got a conversation at her, and then the next time you saw her, it was back to square one again. Yeah. But when I moved over to Northern Ireland, the church she went to Martyr's Memorial. The ones I went to, so I went to Tyndale, but helped at Sandy Row. They were under the umbrella of the Martyrs. They'd been planted by the Martyrs, and so or were kind of worked by the martyrs.
Yeah.
And so we came to be part of the same youth group, and like we just became good friends. We ran about in a group of people, about 30 of us. We hung about everywhere all the time. They'd have been round at my house getting Chineses in and having a bit of crack, and I liked her, but we were just pals. But tell you this, I remember all of them being round one night and just sitting there randomly. You know how you sat there in a kind of C shape in the sofas. I was in one of the armchairs, she's in the sofa. Stuck my feet up on her leg. You fully expect her to like push her feet off and go get out of my face. She kept them there. She's like, oh, I think she might be into me. And so what I did was, in case I ruined it all, because like her family and my family had been friends all these years, I says, you want to come to my prayer meeting on Tuesday night?
There you go, smooth.
If she'd have said no, it would have been bad with it. But she said aye, and the rest's history. We started going out. I think we get engaged after 9 months. A wee bit longer than you guys took. But 9 months and a year and a half later we get married. So 2007, 7th of the 7th, 2007 we get married.
And what did she think about the whole like rebel years, you want to call it that? Like, because that's obviously...
Yeah.
Like, I'm sure she doesn't have that story, but...
No, she doesn't, but I mean, she took it in her stride. It's just, it's part of my story. It's never phased her. She's pretty chilled, Lydia.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, she's pretty chilled. What happened with us happened, and it was so natural, and it was right and real, and
Awesome.
I don't think it bothers her that much, so.
So they married at, what, 24?
I was 24, she was 21, so, yeah.
And then your kid's pretty early on.
Yeah, so we waited a year, and then, so Caleb was born kind of 2 years after we get married. Calvin a couple of years after that. I ended up in Bible college, so we left it a wee while, and then had Amelia about 5 years after that again, I think.
That's awesome.
So, yeah.
Calvin's a good name.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Calvin and Hobbes and John Calvin.
Oh, yeah.
So a good wee mixture there,
Is it not Luther or Caleb's name? Is that not where you're going for?
He's Caleb John, so I suppose we could go for like John... I don't know which one.
John Owen?
John Owen, yeah. He moves like a whale. He's a legend though.
So,
John Knox. Let's go for John Knox. Yeah.
So, how did you just mentioned there a bit about ministry? You told us about going back to Belfast, or coming to Belfast, gym stuff, marriage, kids. Yeah. Where on earth did ministry come from? That's a bit of a left field there.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So, I guess sales is communication, isn't it? Yeah. So it's communicating a message to people and convincing them to buy it. Gospel ministry is the opposite in a sense. It is communication, but you cannot force convince anyone. And so it's so similar in a way and so completely different. It's unbelievable. Because you can, in sales, work with body language. You can take information. It sounds bad, but you can kind of almost manipulate in sales, can't you? Sure. You're selling a product you believe in, so you don't mind selling it, but you convince somebody to take it and sign up to a direct debit. Salvation's not like that at all. It's a work of God's grace in a person's heart. So you present the message. Yes, you persuade in the gospel, of course, but you cannot twist somebody's arm up their back and Christianise them. And so,
although unfortunately a lot of people have over the years tried that, right?
Of course, yeah. I mean, some people's theology lends that, doesn't it? But not what we believe, not what the Bible teaches. So anyway, I was involved in Sunday school teaching. I was involved in youth ministry. I wanted to be a better teacher, so I applied to the Highland Theological College.
Oh, okay, over here.
Yeah, and I did an access course. So they basically said, you're not smart enough to do a degree course.
They're very clever, those guys, actually. Very perceptive.
Absolutely. But do you know what? The access course was phenomenal. It was really, really good. And it was such a good foundation. Now, whenever I finished that, I wondered, am I going to go and do something here? God, what do you want from me? I've finished my access level course. And I ended up getting the manager's job in the gym at that stage, general manager, which was not what I was anticipating, but it was so formative in the skills that it taught me for working with people. So, I did that for a couple of years. It was going really well. I enjoyed it. But at the same time, God was really just resting in my heart that there was something more. And so I spoke to my pastor. He said to me, by this point, by the way, we've gone to the Baptist church in Newtownards, our local Baptist church. I said to him, listen, I'm feeling a sense of kind of urgency here. I feel like I need to go and learn more. And he says, well, we see a gift and ability in you for teaching, and the Irish Baptist College would, be a sensible step. He got the elders to come and speak to it. It was really well worked. Own church, spoke to the pastor, elders came and they thoroughly agreed. They felt that they saw the gifts and abilities in me, and they actually called the Baptist College and says, listen, we've got a guy here.
That's good.
It was perfect. So when did the stuff that you need to do, your interview and your assessments and stuff, and I got in to do the course there at Irish Baptist College starting in 2014.
Wow.
So 10 years after.
And at this point you were still at Ards?
Still at Ards Baptist, yeah.
Yeah, Ards Baptist Church. You'd lived in Ards now at that point?
We moved to Ards in 2006. It'd been at Ards Baptist. We didn't move to Ards Baptist till about 2013-ish.
Okay.
So we were only a year there, which was a bit embarrassing because I said, we're coming here, I'm not asking for the church to give me any money or anything. I'm just, if this is something that you see, then at least, let's talk about it, and, I need your blessing if I'm going to go and do something like this, and that's the way it worked.
Which again is funny because that's right at the same time I was just bedding down in Berlanark. I started working in Berlanark in Glasgow 2009, but then we kind of started thinking about planting 2014, 2015, so again, it's just funny how God does that. Like,
Totally.
two different people.
Our stories are so connected, it's weird, it is really, really weird.
Yeah, it's awesome. So, it wasn't long being at Bible College, being at Ards, before there was a ministry opportunity at Ards as well. How'd that come about?
That was massive, right? So, and a complete, sideswipe, didn't expect it. So, in first year at Bible College, you were in these wee groups, you get broken up into groups and you pray together, which is good. It's one of the better things about Bible College, these wee kind of connection groups. And but what I noticed in first year really quickly was that the third years were panicking. So like all of their prayers surrounded what's going to happen next, and you can understand that, but it was also like, I don't want to be like that. Yeah. God's led me this far, and I don't want to panic about what's next. But by the end of first year, I was kind of like, God, what's next? And
I was had like 2 young kids at that point, like
yeah, and I totally trusted that if God had brought me this far, and by the way, like the provisions He made to get us through Bible College were just amazing. So there was no doubt God was in it, no doubt. But I was starting to think, what even type of ministry do you want me to do? Because I think Lydia and I were more thinking we'd end up going somewhere more like missionary type work, rather than pastoral
like overseas
ministry.
Somewhere.
Anyway, I totally. But yeah, went on our honeymoon to France, the graveyard of missionaries, and we kind of thought we'd go there. But it was just, we didn't know where else to think because we hadn't really been many other places. By the way, under Calvin, once like the epicentre of Protestant Christianity, France, what about 1,000 churches? Under Calvin, now like a pure graveyard. No, so those things were swimming about our head, and didn't know. And then the elders approached me, and they said, we're thinking about you for Ards. And remember, I'm only at the end of my first year, so 2 more years to go. And I was like,
and did they not have a pastor at that point then?
Well, they did, but he was coming to the end of his ministry. Was it at the end of first year? Yeah, so that would mean that it would be like a year's gap, I think. I can't remember. There was certainly at least months of a gap between him retiring and me coming in, but he would finish and there would be a gap before I started of some distance. And so it was what on earth? It was the last thing I thought about. And I discussed it with confidants, people I knew, people who were godly advisors. I prayed about it, and after a lot of good consultation with good people, and also praying it through, and feeling God's leading. I said yes, but when I say I said yes, we said yes in the sense that it affects us all, doesn't it? So that meant that going into second year, I had a ministry, to go to at the end of second year. So by the start of third year, I was a part-time pastor, full-time student.
So preaching like still a couple times a week?
No, not at that stage. I was preaching every now and again at that stage. So I was trying to work it around essays. So I was preaching, but not all the time.
And then doing pastoral work in Ards as well?
Yeah, to a small degree, yeah. So.
And then Bible College, was that 3 years?
3 years, so at the end of third year, then it was full-time into the work there.
And how was that, like pastoring First Church? Was that?
It was tough because you come off the back of doing. This is still a problem for me, I reckon. But you come off the back of an academic course, right, where you're spending countless hours preparing essays, and you really want to do your best, and then you're preaching sermons, and it was a 3 sermon a week kind of church. Now the chat was that wouldn't continue to be the case, but long term it kind of did end up being the case.
And like 3 sermons a week for you is intense, right? 'Cause you take that seriously, like because you were saying about prayer.
That's the point I'm making. You know, the amount of effort I would put into a sermon. I mean, it was too much.
How long were you thinking for it?
Well, a morning sermon, we've talked about this before, yeah. I mean, I'd have been putting in about 20 hours for a morning sermon, treating it like, you know, a pretty decent level essay. And then what do you leave for your next sermon? You know, your evening sermon, maybe 10, 12 hours, and then you've got your Tuesday night, you know, 4 or 5 hours, and then you've got everything else on top of that. So by the time you've started doing anything else, you've maybe got a 40-hour week under you. And to my detriment, other people would maybe say we should have done less, but maybe I'm a bit of a perfectionist. You know, I wanted to do as best I could, because you're handling God's word, and you know, we're to rightly divide the word of truth.
And again, it's that thing that you're just all in for whatever you're doing, right? And so
Totally.
that's what it is.
And you want to do a good job. You know, you want to make sure that, you know, when you step down, you've preached the passage right. And when you're doing exegetical ministry, you know, you're a slave to the word.
And did you see fruit from that ministry then? Like, as you were preaching the word consistently over those early years, where people come to know the Lord, church changing? Like,
Yeah. So, I mean, I wish I could say it was like some sort of Great Awakening, Jonathan Edwards style, but, you know, there were new people coming. So the church was 75% over 65. Okay. Part of the reason why they came to me was I was a younger guy, and they saw potential for maybe the church growing and amongst younger people. And that happened. You know, there were more families coming, but like so much of church work, a lot of the ones that were coming maybe either moving to the area or transferring from somewhere to the church, which isn't extremely healthy. But it saw as some sort of a platform to build ministry opportunities, or, you know, fill gaps that needed filled within the church. And there were others, who were coming along, you know, who couldn't say that they were Christians, and you know, now are followers of Jesus. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So then, as ministry continued, like, actually, when I got to know you, there was kind of some struggles alongside that you were going through ministry stuff. So what, like, how?
So the aim was to supplement what I was doing with someone else, so that I wasn't doing 3 times a week, and we did different things to try and make that happen. But it seemed like whatever happened, you know, there was other responsibilities came in that plugged the time.
Because what your vision was for you to maybe do Sunday morning and then be out reaching people and discipling people.
Which is totally who I am, right? And so I think you can't really be putting square pegs in a round hole for a long-term basis. It might hold for a while, but anyone who knows my personality knows that I'm an outie kind of person.
It's not just whole people person for even the sales stuff, isn't it? Like, you like being around people, the energy, and you're good. Like, even Josh saying you're just out cultivating people, but it's because you like getting alongside people, you like to know people.
It's just how God's made me, you know. Definitely. So it's like, and it kind of goes back to John a bit as well. I think, you know, since not telling him about Jesus, I want to tell non-Christian people about Jesus. Yeah. And so that's so close to my heart that it just bubbles over. Yeah. And so I was wanting to do, preach on a Sunday morning, and maybe do more Christianity Explored type, you know, a teaching ministry. I believe that's still worthy of a wage, you know, it's Bible ministry, but more in the community. And at the same time, I was wanting to maybe bring somebody with me and train them up so that they could then take those types of groups, Christianity Explored or the like groups, let them maybe take somebody with them, me take somebody, and grow that type of thing. But it wasn't where the vision of the church was going. There was no fallout, but I took a step in a different direction so that church could continue to go the way that it seemed that not so much the churches should take that back, the leadership wanted to go.
But that was equally hard for you, because it came alongside a lot of you pouring yourself out, doing 30, 40 hours a week in sermons and all that, and like there's a time of exhaustion, I guess you could call it as well.
Absolutely, sorry. So tapping into that. So there came a time that I was just, I loved the gym. You know, you were talking about size there, and you were. We went out for a run this morning, Pete and I. It was good fun.
I don't know if it was a run.
For a walk.
I was trying to slow him down. He was trying to kill me. Basically, that's what was happening.
I know I love my fitness, and that just went to the side. I didn't feel like I had time for that. And even fun. You need to have fun. You need to be able to go out and just have pure, chilled out, relaxed time, and stuff like that was just getting moved to the side. And so it was like a really bad cycle. I felt like it was just work. Even family time was suffering. You know, it came to a point, you know, even when I was off, church stuff was landing into the inbox all the time, and so you just couldn't escape it. And I spoke to the doctor at that point, and I says, listen, you know, I'm struggling a wee bit with this. And she says, as doctors do, take a wee bit of this, that'll help you out, kind of thing. And so I did for a wee while, and I spoke to the elders then, and I says, listen, this is what's happened, going to be all right, but, you know, I need you to know. But you know the way it goes, church work's busy. It ended up just getting mega busy again, and worse probably, sadly, which point I spoke to a pastor. I'm going to have to take a wee step back again. When I started, when this guy found out there's a really good Baptist pastor, and he told me early on in my ministry that he'd had a breakdown, and he says, watch out for it. He says, you know, the pressures are high, and, you know, just watch out for it, and speak to me if you're ever struggling. And so, like, I'd meet him at other times and he'd say it again, and I was like, you know, what are you talking about? I'm going to be all right, you know, I'm strong enough here. Little did I know that I would need his help, and I actually spoke to him when I was struggling the second time, and he says, mate, speak to the doctor. He says, you're going to burn yourself out, and he says, get time off, and what you need to do is deal with the situation that you're working with, and when you get that levelled out, then it can work. Such good advice. Put my hand up, I said I was struggling, I got the time off, we started to work through it. Another brilliant guy, so the first guy, Billy Houston, thank you Billy. Second guy, Freddie McLaughlin, came alongside me, legend of a guy, absolute legend, and he helped just work through things with me and talked together with me and the leaders, and we really just came to a point where I think I realised this isn't for me. This type of pastoral ministry is not for me, because I'm just going to end up in the same cycle again and again.
Actually, that was hard in the family as well. Like Lydia. I mean, Lydia's chilled as, right?
Oh man!
But I mean, it must take its toll. Like,
I'm sure.
Especially if you're struggling. And
there was other issues going on at the same time. Like, we knocked down our house and rebuilt, so we're living in a caravan at this point as well. So that didn't feel like a pressure to me at the time, but it probably was.
Yeah.
So that all of this stuff's going on at the one time, and you know, I feel for her. She's never complained about it, never made a deal about it. You know, I think's been pretty brilliant through it all. But what a woman.
And
like,
so, whenever you resigned,
yeah,
like, what was going through your head at that point? Were you like pretty content this is the Lord's will? Were you, I failed here? What was there wrestling, or was it just peace?
It got to the point I knew it was the right thing without going into all ins and outs. I came to a point where I realised that I wasn't on the same page, and it was the right thing to take that step, and I had to consider what the future might look like. You know, I was with you for a weekend, and you know, we even talked about maybe church planting, but I really think that needs to have a legitimacy. You need to be sent by a church, and as we worked that through, I really felt, no, that's not the right thing to do. You can't just go and start a church. That's not the way God orders things.
I remember even back then, I encouraged you to even think about the church you're at now. And it's been great, right? So you went to the church in Bangor, Hamilton Road, who we've been, 20 Schemes been over there, like really good guys.
Fantastic.
And they'd be great for you, right?
Unbelievable. I didn't realise how much I needed them.
Yeah.
But see, to go to a place where you're getting fed, where you're getting discipleship, encouragement, you know, where Lydia's getting that as well. She's not just a pastor's wife, you know, who's meant to know stuff, but she's able to get alongside people and, you know, be a Christian with them, you know, do life. It's been great for the kids, I think, despite the fact lockdown slowed down things a wee bit, but now that things are back up and running, it's been brilliant for them. And so we just feel loved, and we've become part of a home group, which is something I would have loved at Ards, but didn't ever happen. And just building relationships with people through home group has just been so good, man. It's been absolutely brilliant.
Oh, praise the Lord. And then, in true Stephen fashion, you've had about 15 jobs by then, like starting up businesses, selling everything under the sun, like.
Well, that leads into another thing, as you know, and during those first years while I was in Northern Ireland, I joined the TA, right? So the Territorial Army, joined the RAMC, Royal Army Medical Corps, and enjoyed it. Signed up as a combat medical technician, first responder type person. But when I was doing the theological studies and getting promotions and work, it was like, I don't have time for everything here. What goes? So as I left the TA, my captain said, "You should come back as a padre." I was like, "It sounds like a good idea, actually," but you know.
So what's a padre? Because I certainly didn't know
army,
that.
A chaplain in the army. So basically, like a minister in the army. A multi kind of talented guy that does a bit of welfare. It definitely shouldn't be me, but when I say multi-talented, guy with a few different roles. Wee bit of preaching, not so much. Really working in community amongst the guys, building relationships and being there for them. When
What you get, and I mean, talking over this last couple of days, it kind of encapsulates a lot of the person the Lord's made you, like the whole fitness side of it, and like all that, but also just the people side of it, get alongside people, and that kind of real passion you've got to make Jesus known. Like it seems like,
and the fitness side. I mean, you get paid to run about with the guys as well, so it's got everything that I love under the one umbrella. But having taken the time off at Ards, well, I've spent 2 years kind of in the application process for this, so I had to join another organisation, the church that ordained me, if Baptists want to call it, that's a scary word for Baptists, is not part of what's called the United Board, the Army Sending Organisation. So I had to join an organisation that is part of it and serve 2 years with them before I could be considered. So I'm in the application process now. The one big potential stumbling block is the fact I took time off work at Ards, and so whether that goes through or not will probably hinge on that, although there are other interviews and other things that you need to jump through as well. But yeah, I'm in the process of looking at that. But ultimately, I just want to be in a role serving God where I'm reaching people, and specifically people who don't go to church, or, you know, who aren't Christians.
And that's why I'm praying that this whole army thing falls flat on its face and you end up back in the west of Scotland with us. So.
Oh dear.
If anybody knows anybody in the army that can stop that process,
God's will be done. God's will be done.
That's awesome. That's this right up to date then. So
totally,
waiting for the next stage of that.
Waiting. Aye. So as I say, God's will be done. But yeah. And thank you, if I'm honest, and the guys from your church are there for the encouragement of your church, man. You know, we went for a wee church weekend with you guys a while back, and what a bunch of guys, like superb. So thanks for putting up with Pete.
Pete Bell, that's really harsh. I mean, he's hardly there.
Definitely, sure.
No, Steve, I really appreciate you. Really appreciate you sharing and taking time out of our holiday to share. I think our wives are probably sleeping in the next room because it's after 9 o'clock at night, so we'll just been up chatting away. But that's good. Again, really thankful for you. Thankful for how the Lord's worked in your life. And again, it's our prayer that there's many other folk kicking about Glasgow now that might feel like they have got no hope and heading nowhere. And we really are praying that the Lord would kind of wrestle them back and
bring them in.
Too. So thank you for you, man.
Thank you, bro.
And that's us.
Cheers, bro.
Thank you for listening to the My Hope Story podcast. To find out how you can have your own hope story, go to www.myhopestory.co.uk.